As the Rohingya crisis reached its first anniversary over the weekend, thousands of refugees who came to Malaysia from Myanmar over the past few years continue to face challenges. A large-scale government crackdown against illegal migrant workers that started in June under Malaysia's new government has left many Rohingya families in limbo. As Melissa Go reports, women and children have been left to fend for themselves after the men and their families were detained by immigration officers.
Compared to the makeshift tents in the refugee camps of Bangladesh, these basic accommodations in the suburbs of Kuala Lumpur may seem a welcome relief for Rohingya refugees, including hundreds who fled last year's violence in Myanmar's Rakhine state to seek a better life in Malaysia. But on closer examination, many tell a different story. Muhammad Fatima and her 6 children arrived in Malaysia in December 2014, well before the military crackdown in Rakhine a year ago. They left Myanmar to escape violence and persecution in her village outside Sittwe. For 3 months now, she and her family have lived in this so-called transit home, cooped up in a small room with hardly any ventilation. She said her husband was arrested in a recent crackdown by Malaysian authorities to flush out illegal migrant workers. At first, she was reluctant to let me in, wary of ongoing immigration spot checks. Fatima said she and her children were forced to move out of their rented flat because she was unable to pay the rent.
Rumah tak ada, makan tak ada, duit tak ada tengok, saya tak ada kerja, anak kisi-kisi.
She has 6 children and the youngest just turned 1. Her 3-year-old son, who's asthmatic, is ill, but she can't afford to pay his medical bills. Her eldest son, Farouk, is trying to find a job to help support the family, but he's afraid of being arrested too.
Kalau ayah saya tak ada, kita orang takut. Kalau ayah ada, tak takut.
Thanks to the help of local community leader, they now have a temporary roof over their heads.
Some of the Rohingya refugees, they're still illegal because they don't have a UN card, still under processing their registration in UNHCR. So because of that, processing is too long. So the family of Rohingya family they affected is maybe arrested by immigration or police authorities.
Families like Fatima rely on public donations to survive. Now, although Malaysia is not a signatory to the UN Convention on Refugees, it's home to more than 150,000 refugees, and more than half of them are stateless Rohingyas. They are not allowed to work legally in this country, and their children are not entitled to government-sponsored healthcare and education. But the head of the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights is now urging Malaysia's new government to do more to protect the Rohingyas.
I meet refugees all the time, and I see the conditions in which they live, they work, and the fear in which they live. Especially now with the raids that are going to take place, they are very fearful of going out of the house for fear that they will be arrested.
Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency says the unclear status of Rohingya refugees makes them easy victims of exploitation.
But as long as we keep refugees as illegals, and as long as we treat them in the criminal zone, they will be exploited, and women and kids will be the most vulnerable and the most exploited.
The new government under Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has promised to improve the status of Rohingya refugees, including allowing them to work legally in this country. It was part of the Pakatan Harapan Coalition's election manifesto, but nothing concrete has been implemented so far.
Yeah, it is on the list in as far as the Pakatan Harapan manifesto is concerned, but you know, we have 100 days promise and then we have 60 promises within 5 years. The refugee issues is quite complex. Yeah. At the same time, we are faced with undocumented foreign workers. Yeah.
For now, the plight of the Rohingyas, one of the world's most persecuted minorities, continues. Melissa Go, Channel News Asia, Kuala Lumpur.